everybody. Where's my partner, Joyce? Oh, there you are. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about unbundling the big deal, what we did at the University of Cape Town, and then Joyce will follow with an experience that they've had at UKZN. I've structured my presentation as such. First of all, I'm going to quickly describe the subscription review process that we underwent at UCT in 2015. I did talk about this at the previous SANLiC conference, discussing where we were with the process at that time. And then today I'm going to just continue with how we went about unbundling, the aftermath that hit us, and something's happened with all the and then one or two lessons that we learnt along the way. So in 2015, as I said, I talked at the SANLiC conference. We had been tasked in the libraries by a special budget task team at the institution to look at the impact for 3 different levels of cuts to the subscription budget, what that impact would look like on the institution. In 2015, in my presentation, I described how we had gone about developing evaluation criteria to look at all our subscriptions, how pertinent they were to the research and teaching that was currently happening in the institution. We looked at quality indicators such as impact factors, whether the titles were on the DHET accredited list, whether we could access that content elsewhere in aggregators, or whether it was available through open access. We looked at our usage data, we looked at the cost per use, and then we also looked at whether there was the option to move from a print subscription to an electronic subscription. We then applied that evaluation criteria carefully. We had to take into consideration that there were some small departments or niche research areas where we wouldn't see huge usage statistics. We had to make exceptions regarding our print subscriptions because, of course, we didn't have usage statistics for those. And then we also viewed these subscriptions that we had for our special collections areas, those African studies titles, had to view them differently. And then we engaged with our faculty, and we engaged a lot with our faculty. We had workshops amongst the University of Cape Town librarians to make sure that all the librarians would be engaged when they talked to the academics that they served. There was a dean's meeting, Brenda Thomas, our executive director, meeting with the high level of the institution to discuss this budget cut that had been forced upon us. The faculty dean's advisory committee meetings, meeting with all the heads of the departments in the different academic areas. So we did a lot of subscriptions, lots of engagements. And through all of that engagement, we asked the academic departments to identify which of the subscriptions were must-haves in their view. And then we also asked them to identify which could be dropped in a first, second, and third level cut. We'd been tasked with evaluating a 5%, 10%, and 15% cut to our subscriptions. So that's where we got the first, second, and third level cuts. At the end of that process, the library's recommendation to the budget task team was that we would recommend that we limit the cut to the first level of evaluation, and that was a 2.5 million, as this would have the least impact on the academic enterprise. However, unfortunately, the news that we got back was that we were required to cut 5 million from our budget, our second level cut. So that was what we would implement when we did our renewals at the end of 2015 for going into 2016. We finalized the titles. In the end, there were 612 individual subscriptions that were identified for cancellation. So that was print and electronic subscriptions. That comprised the titles that had been identified by the academics as first or second level cuts. Those third level cuts, so that was the titles that academics felt were important. If those were available online, we would cut subscriptions. And also the must-have titles, if those were available online. And yeah. So the value of those 612 subscriptions came to 3.8 million. And we still had 1.1 million that we needed to find. And that we did by unbundling e-journal packages. So how did we go about this? Did I skip a slide? No. So we needed to find 1.1 million. We were able to make a small saving on our Sage package by shifting from to a one what do they call it? E-only single invoice model. So we were able to make a small saving there. Wiley had a 1% cancellation allowance, and we took advantage of that. And then once those cuts had all been calculated, we needed to cut 25% from the other packages that we had identified for looking at in this exercise. We did a lot of work looking at the various license agreements to determine where changes could be made that would result in savings. When those agreements would be expiring, what the opt-out terms were. And I do want to say thank you to our various publisher representatives, because they worked tirelessly with Shireen Davis-Evans, our subscriptions librarian at the time, to work towards a solution that would best meet our needs. Even though we had to reduce how much money we were spending with them, they were very patient. So thank you to those people involved. So we needed to cut 25% from Oxford, Springer, and Taylor and Francis. We explored options to subscribe to smaller subject collections. But nothing, whichever way we sliced it, we didn't end up with what we wanted. We were really looking forward to, during this process, reducing our titles to those titles that we wanted. We didn't want to carry deadwood, that long tail of titles that we get in packages where we see no usage. We just wanted to have subscriptions to the titles that we wanted, and that met our research and teaching needs at the time. Yeah, so that was, besides the need to reduce the costs, we wanted to do a little bit of collection development in those packages. So we were wanting to come up with what we called a UCT bespoke model. And our aim was to look at the highest used titles in those packages, and we wanted to subscribe to those ones. And then if the bespoke model didn't work, we would move to smaller subject collections. But that didn't pan out as we had hoped. So, we looked at our usage statistics. The average use over 2 years, 2013 and 2014, because we were doing this exercise during 2015. And we were planning that we would want to keep the must-have titles with a higher than 100 average downloads over 2 years. We would consider the titles with 21 to 99 average downloads, and we would cut those titles that had less than 20 downloads. We considered the cost per use. If it worked out at less than £7, we would consider having that in our package. But if our cost per use was greater than £7, it was more cost effective for us to go interlibrary loan route. And then in our deliberations, we also took into account our small departments and those niche areas in terms of research. We looked at the number of researchers in those departments to identify which titles were important to those small departments. And then we calculated the usage per researcher in that department, assuming that all of the researchers were actually using our resources. We also, using Scopus, we looked at the times journals. Those journals had been cited by UCT researchers over the period 2010 to 2015. And here I'd like to thank the UCT Libraries Bibliometrics Working Group, because they worked with our subscriptions librarian to do that calculation, which was a big job. We were very aware that the usage statistics are a very blunt instrument, so we needed to try and bring in other factors to try and work out how to evaluate the value of each of the titles in these packages to our users. But in the end, we had so much money, and I think it was the usage statistics that were the major factor the predominant factor in determining which titles made it into our new collections. In some cases, Shireen did shift the order of titles to take into account those niche subject areas. And so we ended up with 3 smaller packages. We lost a number of titles from those big packages, so you can see how reduced our collections were in those packages. In order to mitigate the impact on our researchers, what we actually did was redirect some of our subscription funds to our interlibrary loan department to subsidize or to pay for any articles that our researchers wanted from these titles, from these publishers, through interlibrary loans, so that they wouldn't have to pay for overseas interlibrary loans, but the libraries would cover that cost. Turns out they didn't use a lot of, that money was very poorly used. Although we did notice an increase in some of the interlibrary loans. So, yeah, in the end of 2015, we stepped out of those packages. And then April 2016 arrived, and we heard all about it. The fallout started then. And we ascribe this generally to the end of the 3-month grace period that we typically see from publishers, because it was the beginning of April when we got some messages from our academics about cutting the access and how it's going to reduce UCT's research revenue because they can no longer do their research. The access to the core journals, it's the cornerstone of academic working conditions. And the noise that the academics made at that time was certainly heard by the institution. In the previous part of our subscription review, somehow the feedback from the academics didn't reach the holders of the purse strings. But at this stage in the year, and what was happening at the university, the institution heard what the academics were saying in terms of the lost access. So we had to go through a process of revisiting what we had done in unbundling our packages. High-level meeting, the DVC research and the executive director from our libraries. There was a proposal that the heads of departments through the deans would consult with their departments to identify those mission-critical teaching and research titles. And when I was thinking about this, I was mission-critical, very much in line with the talk last night. And then the libraries collated the titles and we did the costing. And then we were going to request the funds from the university executive for approval. We identified titles, the lost access titles. You can see there the numbers that we lost in our unbundling. And then these were the titles that were identified as mission critical. Once we did the sums, if we had to subscribe to all of those titles, we would be way over what we would have been spending on packages. So the only solution was to get back into the packages. So we asked the university for more money to get back into the packages during 2016. Unfortunately, we couldn't find those funds, but we did add it to the in our 2017 budget request, and that was granted to us. So this year, Jeremiah Peterson, our current subscriptions librarian, has quickly undone all of that hard labor that Shireen did previously, and has been working with the publishers to once again set us up with these packages. So what have we learnt in this whole exercise? I asked my colleagues for some feedback on that. That we had academics telling us titles were mission critical, and yet the usage statistics we were seeing were 0. So we couldn't figure out why that is. One of my colleagues talking about they seem to get their own copies elsewhere. Another colleague saying that it's impossible to get out of these packages. Once we're in it, we're stuck. And then another interesting insight is that those academics who say they never use the library, maybe they do, because they certainly complained when the titles were taken away. And thank you. And over to Joyce.
Good morning, colleagues. I was told that I'm going to have 5 minutes to talk. That's why I'm happy, because I'm going to be speaking for only 5 minutes. And that's why I don't have slides, because speaking for 5 minutes, it's only greeting, hello, and then goodbye. I'm Joyce Myeza. I come from UKZN. I'm just going to be sharing an experience of a budget cut. But I'm going to be very informal, in such a way that Caroline has covered what we all have gone through. That is just normal for across all institutions. So I'm just not going to go there. I'm just going to rather share a couple of experiences that has emanated from UKZN experience. But before I share, I remember sometime in 2015 getting a call from one of my colleagues from one of the well-known universities in South Africa, saying to me, Joyce, I'm having a problem, you know? How are you guys surviving? You know, we've received a budget cut and we don't know what to do from here. And I'm like, right, so how do you want me to help you? It goes like, you guys are here that you're doing fine. And I'm like, okay, well, let me help you. How much do you have? He's like, I'm sitting with 99 million. I'm like, what? 99 million? You're asking me sitting sitting with 40 million, how do you want to survive? And I'm like, can I swap seats? I don't mind becoming a director over there, because with 99 million, I can do everything I want and I'll be left with a lot. Yeah. So you will know then from that experience that for us, it has been really, really hard, but we still had to survive. A couple of experiences that I'm going to share. I'm glad I'm seeing WWIS here, because when we had a knock that our budget was going to be seriously cut for databases, we consulted with academics. And I think you all have experienced that academics will be wanting to cut nothing. Rather, they'll be wanting you to add. They'll be complaining how you haven't been meeting their needs. So that was one experience that we had with academics. And then I consulted with WWIS, which they've been really great. And I really thank you, Andrew, that you're here. They did an analysis. Andre sat down with us and he said, you know what, Joyce, when things are like this, you've got to rise above. Now what we're going to do with you, we don't need your money, we need nothing from you. We're going to assess your system as to how are you doing with your research. And then that's where you're going to start. We will do analysis using Web of Science. They did that, we sat down and we saw that, okay, this is where our researchers are prominent researchers, where when you go to H-index, their H-index is above 20, it's going to 30-something, and then we were like, okay, so these are items that we do not even want to interrupt because they speak to the research of the institution in terms of like the input in terms of our research. So we put those aside. And then we were left with a huge part that you know that even when you look at your institution, you will have departments that are driving research in your strategy, that is good. But you will have other departments that are just bringing finance. They might be like having courses that are just bringing more finance for you. So you have to combine the two, the strategy and the financial gain. So we're still stuck. And then that's when we had to be drastic and introduce something called pay-per-view. So now, to take you back, how did we achieve pay-per-view? Beginning of 2015, I hope Sabinet is here, we proposed, I think it was end of 2014, that we were going to move to World Share Management Services. And I remember speaking to Pierre, I hope he's around. And I think I gave him a call, it was around end of November. And I said, Pierre, we've made a decision, we just want to move to World Share Management Services. And Pierre said to me, Joyce, I hear what you say, but you mean for January? I said, yeah. And he said, but do you think that's possible? Do you think that's achievable? I said, Pierre, there is one thing I know about myself. I'm acting in this position, so I can mess up as I want to. So if it's a mess, I'll be out of the position and I'll be happy. If it's not a mess, then I can apply and say, hey, I just want to be like permanent in this position. So Pierre was very helpful. He came on board and you will be very surprised that by January we were up and running on World Share Management Services. So that's one of the biggest changes that we've ever had at UKZN, which has assisted us a lot. So with World Share Management Services, we started identifying that with all these titles, when you just do a search, because it's more like a hub, one-stop shop, you just type your search and then it retrieves from all the subscriptions that you have. So we will identify that, okay, well, this title is available on, I'm going to make an example, EBSCO. It's also available on Karen Francis. It's also available on blah, blah, blah. Oh, then we then engaged with librarians that we're going to do a proper analysis now to identify some of these duplicates, because then you'll understand that some publishers, they'll sign an agreement with this vendor and that vendor and that vendor. Okay, then we then rolled out to the pay-per-view using the World Share Management Services, which worked very, very well. We started like getting like, response from lecturers who were very happy. again, we were working directly with WWIS because you do not want to delay anything for a researcher. So if they identify an article now, it needs to be available at least within 2 hours. So we said to to WWIS, guys, we will just send our request, you just email us, you bill us later. So that method worked wonders, because we will just send them, we'll keep stats, we will look at the downloads, and then I remember holding all our subscriptions around Feb, and Andre said to me, hold your subscriptions, start your pay-per-view, and then you can reassess as to what exactly is being downloaded fast. Then you know you've got an evidence. So you can just, like recall that subscription and go back. And I remember one of them being Taylor and Francis, which we were like buying articles, and then immediately Andre consulted me, he said, Joyce, I think here you have to make a move, rather just recall this subscription. So to cut the matter short, because it's just sharing, last year our budget was further cut by 30%. So now again, you will recall that when you think you're stable up until Jacob Zuma says something, and then you start fluctuating, and then you get so dizzy, you don't know what to do anymore, because you thought things were just fine. That is exactly the experience that we've been going through. So last year we had to take a drastic decision now to cut ScienceDirect. And I remember sitting at our management meeting. I even remember Andre now coming to me and saying, Joyce, are you sure about this? And like, even my friend now is questioning me. I thought we were both thugs, So we had to take a drastic measure and just cut ScienceDirect, which wasn't really well received. But we did our own analysis. We opted for little packages like Clinical Key, which is part of Elsevier people. Now, the biggest issue was money. And I remember consulting with Elsevier people who were very unhappy with me. And I kept on saying to them, look, it's not personal, it's money. And they had to go through steps and go to the VC, and I remember getting a call from a VC saying, well, Elsevier were like talking to me, and I told them, Joyce, that we don't have money, but if they can give us this product for free, we'll be very happy. And I said, I'm happy that at least we told them that it's about money. So in the end, what has happened? I met with the VC and the DVC because I report directly to the DVC. I said, you know what? What irritates me about the vendors, I'm just not out to kill any business, but I like flexibility. I've spoken to Elsevier many, many times that how about they repackage their big package in such a way that if this year I'm able to just take this part, I'm free to do so. Because we're not going to be having this big sum of money. And they don't want to listen. So what am I left with? It's just to do something drastic. And hey, if they think I'm at that, fine, I'm happy with that. So in the end, it has been a great experience. I like my colleagues from Elsevier. They supply a very, very good product. Everybody knows that. But in the end, it has caused them to come and sit on the table with UKZN and now propose what is going to work for us. So they've come around last month and they said, look, Joyce, we understand now that you are not personal, it's about finances, and we also want to help. So we are proposing that we're going to have a pay-per-view where you're going to buy the coupons. Say, for instance, you are able to afford the coupons for 5 million. We're going to just get coupons for 5 million. And then your downloads will be amounting to 5 million. And I said, you know what? I'm happy. And I think this is exactly the disruption that Prof. Habib spoke about, I think, last year. I think that's where I'm going to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. You were supposed to speak for 5 minutes. You went into 15 minutes, and I couldn't stop you because people were very interested in what you're talking about. So that is our major goal.